Here's what we're talking about today on Daily Blast Live.
Today on DBL, we're dedicating the entire hour to medicine in America, featuring health horror stories that will leave you in shock. From one patient's symptoms being ignored for 2 straight years, to a woman's battling with extreme pain while dealing with gaslighting. Plus, another woman shares how multiple doctors dismissed her medical emergency. And expert advice on how to be your own advocate.
Oh my gosh.
Get real.
No. Y'all, just stop.
This is a sham.
It's finally here. Drum roll.
Welcome to DBL. Today is a very special day because we have an entire hour dedicated to medicine in America. We have guests that will share personal stories of medical gaslighting and biases that they have experienced while seeking health care, as well as professionals speaking about the state of medicine in America. If you've never heard the term medical gaslighting before, it's when concerns about your health are being dismissed, they're not heard, and they are minimized. So before we talk to our first guest, have any of you ever experienced this? Erica, I know you and I have had conversations.
Yeah, I had a procedure that I assumed was going to be pretty, standard, and it wasn't like a invasive procedure, but it was invasive because the amount of pain that I received during this procedure, where I actually did, like, it closed and I passed out. And it turned out that I guess it's normal for you to get pain medication, but I wasn't given pain medication.
Not even offered it.
Right. And I was told that I was strong enough to withstand all of this. And it was something that when I think about in hindsight, because my husband was out of town that week, or at least he was supposed to be, and he flew back in early to go with me there, which he had to drive me. So I was very grateful for that. But ever since then, I don't even do doctor's appointments without him going as well, because I realize the importance of having advocacy when you're unable to advocate for yourself.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's dive right in. Our first guest knows what it's like to be on both ends of a doctor's appointment. When she was pregnant, she told her doctors that she had a family history of preeclampsia, but they brushed her off and told her she would be fine. That was until she developed severe preeclampsia 38 weeks into her pregnancy. Now, she was rushed to the ER to give birth to her son, but it was during her hospital stay that she truly experienced bias in healthcare. This experience pushed her to advocate for Black maternal health care for underserved communities as a women's health nurse practitioner. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Shawana Moore.
Yes! Thanks so much for having me.
Hi there, Dr. Moore. Could you just paint us a picture about what you experienced? I know it's hard, but during your hospital stay right after giving birth.
Absolutely. So I had a very traumatic hospital experience post my birthing experience. I didn't feel as though the healthcare providers were listening to myself or my husband's concerns. I can remember being wheeled up into my actual hospital room, and the bells and whistles started to go off. I broke out into a huge sweat. My husband looked really, really scared and paranoid, and nobody showed up for about at least 5 to 10 minutes.
Stop
and the
it.
nurse rushed in. A nurse rushed in, and she said, "Did anybody come in? Did anybody come in? Your blood pressure is dropping." And my husband shook his head no. And she put me in an appropriate position to raise my blood pressure. But that was just one incident. And again, I just felt like I was dismissed. I wasn't cared for in an attentive way, nor was I given a quality care until I had a student who actually worked on that unit and had to tell her colleagues that I was a professor and I was a nurse practitioner.
Right.
And it wasn't until then I felt like I was heard.
Well, speaking of being heard, I wanted to ask you, what did this teach you about being a patient? Because you know this story from both sides now.
So it taught me the importance of patients being and feeling empowered to utilize their voice within the healthcare setting. And it showed me the importance of patients understanding that they are a critical part of the healthcare team, and their voice is just as valuable as the healthcare provider. And from a provider perspective, it taught me to always listen to my patients, to always validate what they're saying and to act upon that.
Dr. Moore, how did that experience motivate you to do the advocacy work you do now for Black maternal health care and health care for underserved communities?
So health equity has always been a passion of mine and a core to what I do on a day-to-day basis. So as a director of the Doctor of Nursing Practice program at Emory University, I help prepare the next generation of advanced practice providers that'll go out there and care for diverse communities. So I ensure things like health equity, social determinants of health, social justice is implemented within the curriculum. As the president of the National Association of Nurse Practitioners of Women's Health, throughout our organization, we ensure that equity and justice is threaded through all that we provide to our members, including educational opportunities.
You know, Dr. Moore, I really appreciate you being here. I really want to get your thoughts on why so many women, or especially women of color, experience medical gaslighting.
So I think this all boils down to the isms, both sexism as well as racism, and it has a really historical context. And again, these systems have been structurally put in place over time. And I always say the beauty of those structures that have been put in place, they can be dismantled. Yes. But again, those isms really play a critical role in gaslighting, medical gaslighting, specifically for women and women of color. We know based on the data that women have a longer road to diagnosis for certain health conditions when compared to male counterparts, specifically thinking of cancer. When we look at our Black and Brown communities of individuals, we know that medical diagnosis and treatment is delayed because of medical gaslighting. Again, I put that directly on those isms, both sexism as well as racism.
Well said. Dr. Moore, thank you so much for sharing your story with us and educating us more about medicine in America. DBL Nation, you can learn more about Dr. Moore's work at mpwh.org. Thank you again, Dr. Moore.
Thank you for what you do. Thank you.
Coming up on this special edition of DBL, a woman who experienced symptoms for 2 years straight, but kept getting dismissed will be here live to share her story. How did she finally get answers? That is next on this special episode, Medicine in America, Life and Death.
Summer vacation season is in full swing, and as families head to the beach, you may have heard the old advice. If you get a cut walking on a shell, or maybe you just have a blister, go rinse it in the ocean. The salt water will clean the wound. So, does ocean water actually help to heal cuts and scrapes? Let's verify. Our sources are Dr. Allison Harvey, emergency medicine specialist with Prisma Health, and Brian Rabin, the manager of the Aquatic Sciences program with the Bureau of Water with the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. Let's start with the water. During the peak summer months, scientists from DHEC study bacteria levels in the water off South Carolina's coastline.
One of the staff members goes out to one of these stations, and they actually go about knee deep into the water. So you get where children could be playing and starting to get their heads under the water. And so that's where we choose that depth for the collection.
And per EPA guidelines, if the sample comes back more than 104 colonies per 100 milliliters of water, DHEC issues a short-term advisory. Dr. Allison Harvey says one bacteria in the water called Vibrio can send people to the ER.
The most concerning one that I think a lot of people have probably heard of is Vibrio. What a lot of people don't realize is you can catch these same Vibrio bacteria in the ocean, and they're very common contaminants, particularly in the summer and in warmer waters.
So why all the confusion about salt water helping a wound?
It depends on if the salt water is sterile or in an ocean, because we use sterile salt water in the hospital all the time.
So we can verify, while sterile saline water is good for cleaning a cut, the ocean water is not. But Dr. Harvey says not to let that ruin your trip to the beach. If you do have an open cut, make sure it's fully covered. With your Verify, I'm Andrea Mock.
I mean, I go in your house and you have a lot of hip hop memorabilia.
Yes.
It's not original, but if you were...
Wow.
Do you want to move on?
The chicken has come to bite the pig in the butt.
I need a bumper sticker made out of that. We need to see Al or Jeff doing some exercises.
Real fast, watch this.
Can you do this? Oh my God. Welcome back to a special edition of DBL where we are dedicated to sharing patients' experiences with medical gaslighting and biases in healthcare. Our next guest had a slew of symptoms causing her to be sick for 2 straight years without finding the root cause. From a 6-month migraine to a fatal blood disorder, Alyssa Bassist was left confused and frustrated by contradicting doctors. Watch.
It felt like being on a bad date. Every doctor appointment felt like I was on a bad date. I was talking too much, texting too much, asking too many questions, and they were uninterested, frustrated, aggravated, and they wanted to get out of there. The first thing that happened to me was I was losing my vision, accompanied by a 24/7, 6-month headache, and I had no idea what was wrong. I thought, and in a way hoped that it was a brain tumor, just so I could know what it is. I finally went to someone who's called a psychopharmacologist. She found out that the medication I was prescribed, I was experiencing side effects that had caused nerve and muscle damage that was like pulling on my eyes and my brain. I was going from doctor to doctor to doctor, explaining my symptoms, and I just felt like I was annoying them. And they didn't believe in my pain like I did. And I could tell they didn't because of what they would suggest was wrong, which was often nothing. Am I imagining it? Am I making it worse? Is this something that I'm doing to myself? Finally, I went to a gastroenterologist for my stomach ache. In our appointment, she said, and I quote, "What if nothing's wrong with you?" And then the next day, she called me to let me know that I had hyponatremia. Hyponatremia is a fatal blood disease that people literally drop dead from.
Wow, welcome to DBL, Alyssa Bassist.
Wow.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you.
Alyssa, so glad you are life-saving on this show right now. Tell us, how did you get relief after your hyponatremia diagnosis?
Okay, well, you wouldn't believe it, but it didn't end there. The pain showed up again in my arms and then in my back, and I had gone to see an acupuncturist who suggested that my physical symptoms could be coming from repressed rage. And she said that the body will churn up emotions and trauma, not always in tears, but in headaches. And this really changed my perspective on what was making me sick. Then another doctor recommended, randomly I thought, to see an OCD specialist.
Oh, wow.
who would help me express my every emotion, help me get my voice back, which would help me regain health. And in researching my book, Hysterical, I found so many medical studies that showed that emotions affect the immune system, the mind affects the body, we can make ourselves sick, and studies on expression therapy and on emotional awareness show that both of those things improve immune function, improve survival rates, reduce pain on the level of most pain relievers, and that's what happened to me. The more I started using my voice, advocating for myself, getting mad when I felt mad, saying no, and not apologizing every other minute, my pain started to go away along with my rage.
Bravo.
Wow.
Bravo.
I'm reading the prompter here, and it's just shot. It says that you were sick for 2 years straight. 2 straight years you were sick. When did you realize we were taking being healthy for granted?
Being sick is a waking nightmare. Illness, pain, it hijacks your days, your reality, your sense of self, your personality. And my whole life, I've always been called too emotional, melodramatic, hysterical, and all of that was unattractive. So I started to just bite my tongue until it bled. I started to say less, argue less, settle for less, ask for less, and all of which contributed to me getting sick, staying powerless, And my silence ended up hurting me more than anything I could say. And at some point I realized I would rather be alive and well than nice and quiet. And now I also know that a day without a headache is a good day. Nothing else has to happen.
Wow. So you wrote a book about your experiences, ironically titled Hysterical, and normally I'd get in trouble if I said that word to a woman these days, but why did you call it hysterical?
My book is about every single definition of the word.
Okay,
it's about an unexplained physical illness. It's about uncontrolled extreme emotion. It's about how we use these derogatory words and labels on women to pathologize their feelings and to silence them. It's about these enduring medical myths and misconceptions of the female body that just won't die. And it's about the mind-body syndrome, which today is like a hysteria diagnosis, but without the sexism. It's about how the mind transcribes repressed emotions on the body in the form of intense pain along the nerves. And according to my mom, the book is very funny.
I love it. Good. According to a lot of people, I'm reading all the different reviews on the back. Well done. Thank you so much, Alyssa. DBL Nation, you have to pick up a copy of Hysterical, available at your independent bookstore or at alyssabassist.com. Thank you so much, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Coming up, Dr. Coley will join us live to talk about how common it is to be misdiagnosed, and is it more common for this to happen to women? That's next on this special episode, Medicine in America, Life and Death.
A passport is your most important travel document, and they're typically valid for 10 years. But a woman in a viral TikTok with more than 10 million views claims she wasn't allowed to board her flight because her passport expired in 5 months.
Only to get to the airport to be told that you can't fly.
So, let's verify. Do some countries require you to have at least 6 months left on your passport in order to travel? Our sources are the U.S. State Department, several U.S. embassies, and the embassies of the United Arab Emirates and Mexico. While your passport has an expiration date, the State Department says many countries require you to renew it several months before visiting. This is typically to avoid your passport expiring if your plans change and you stay longer than planned. The rules vary depending on where you're going. The TikToker was flying to the United Arab Emirates, which requires passports to remain valid for 6 months after the passenger's arrival. This is the same policy as many other countries, including China, India, Thailand, and Israel. But that's not the case everywhere. For example, Mexico mandates that your passport remain valid just for the length of your stay. So, yes, some countries do require you to have at least 6 months left on your passport in order to travel. The State Department says to check the entry rules on its website and to plan ahead because it can take more than 3 months to renew your passport. But it does offer same-day passports in certain circumstances for an extra fee, which is what the TikToker ended up doing. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Are you skeptical of headlines and what you see on social media? We are too. The Verify newsletter answers your questions, clarifies what's true and false, and even includes a daily fun fact. Go to verifythis.com/email to check it out.
Welcome back to a special edition of DBL, where we are dedicating today's show to medicine in America. And of course, we have to bring in our very own Dr. Pyle Coley to talk all about this topic. Dr. Coley, thank you so much for being here.
Actually, I want to applaud you guys today because bringing this up is an incredible service I think you are doing to DBL Nation, to every one of my patients, and thank you for doing so because I think this is something we don't talk about enough.
I agree. Life-saving episode. Absolutely. All right. I have a very personal relationship with today's topic. My mom, Judy, we love you. She has Gaucher's disease, okay? She was misdiagnosed for 11 years. So from 1971 to 1982, completely misdiagnosed. She was eventually told it was in her head. Very similar to the guest we already had. What do I say to a doctor who tells me to my face, your pain is not real? What do I say?
You know, Tori, your mom is in a really tough situation because she had a really rare condition.
Yeah.
And she's a woman. And we know that the combination of those two things makes it very likely for doctors, healthcare system in general, to mistreat, to misdiagnose these types of patients. But here's the problem. Like, you know, you have to try to understand that doctors read about diseases, patients live those diseases. And so I, as a person, use all the clues that I have, the physical exam, the history, what you're telling me, what I observe, to come to my best conclusion of what might be the diagnosis. But that's not 100% correct. And the patient is really the captain of the ship, and they just have to basically take control of that. So what I like to say is, like, if a patient comes into my office and says, I'm tired, that's a common complaint, right? I'll say, well, I'm tired too. However, if they come in and tell me details and say, I can't get out of bed some days, I can't, you know, even have the energy to take a shower or cook my dinner, that's a whole different level. It puts it in context for me. If they come in with a loved one or partner who says they're a different person now because of their fatigue, that puts it in a
debilitating me.
Yes. Yeah. So I think try to give them as many clues as you can about your condition. And if they're being flippant or, you know, blowing you off, then you need to address it with them.
So why might some doctors be gaslighting their patients?
You know, I hate that word because it suggests a malicious intent, but I think I would rather call it medical ignorance, because that's what it is. They do it sort of unintentionally, and I think it's for a number of different reasons. One is, you know, we've got 5 minutes with a patient. We're being pressed by the system to see somebody every 5 minutes. So you come in and say, I have shortness of breath and I have cough. I'm going to put you in the pneumonia box, because we've been told in medical school when you hear hoofbeats, you think horses, not zebras. I'm not going to think lung cancer. I'm going to think pneumonia. So part of it is, you know, that they're pressed for time. They try to see common things are common. But part of it is that they bring in their own cultural biases into what the visit is. So if I come in there and, you know, somebody complains of pain, my own pain threshold could determine, how I think about that person. Sometimes I bring in a diagnostic bias. So if yesterday I saw a patient who had a specific diagnosis, they came in with headaches and turned out to be a brain tumor, well, guess what? I'm more likely to think about a brain tumor. So a lot of this is unconscious, but you really need to sort of, as a patient, make sure that you're getting the care that you deserve.
Wow, so much information. Yeah. But we're going to have more with Dr. Coley. Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Coley and DBL Nation. Check out Dr. Coley's podcast, Heart of Medicine, and we will hear more from her throughout the show. Absolutely. We'll be right back.
For decades, Americans have believed that using hot or warm water would ensure that their clothes came out of the washing machine clean. But recently, detergent companies have claimed that washing clothes in cold water is just as effective.
Tide is busting laundry's biggest myth, that cold water can't clean.
For years, climate activists have urged people to switch to cold water, saying it's better for the environment. Energy Star says heating water accounts for about 90% of the energy needed to run a washer. So, less hot water used, more energy saved. So let's verify. Is washing clothes in cold water just as effective as washing them in hot water? Our sources are Brian Sansoni from the American Cleaning Institute, General Electric, Consumer Reports, and the CDC. Brian Sansoni says advancements in technology for both detergents and washing machines mean cold water can not only get the job done as well as hot water, but cold water is actually better for your clothes in addition to the environment.
It certainly can lengthen the life of your fabrics and save energy.
Tests conducted by Consumer Reports that compare the efficacy of detergents at different temperatures confirm that you no longer have to use hot water to get clothes clean. And General Electric, a company that makes washing machines, says cold water can remove tough stains like grass and blood just as well as, if not better, than hot water.
Very simply put, cold water washing is good for your clothes, good for your wallet, and good for Mother Earth.
So we can verify, yes, washing clothes in cold water is just as effective as using hot water. If someone in your house is sick, our experts, including the CDC, suggest using hot water to ensure that germs don't spread. But for your practical everyday laundering, cold water does the trick. With your Verify and a lot of laundry to do, I'm Adiante Till.
Walk into your favorite store and you'll see a wall of choices to protect your skin from the sun. A Verify viewer texted us asking about the difference between spray-on and lotion sunscreens. So, let's verify. Are spray-on sunscreens as effective as lotions? Our sources are Harvard Health and 2 board-certified dermatologists to explain it's all about how you apply sunscreen.
I think it's easier with the lotion to make sure that you're getting full coverage. With a spray, you may not be as careful. So that is a consideration with the spray.
Dr. Rajani Kanta also says despite the advertising, you can't simply spray and go.
I recommend that you spray and then you make sure that you rub it in so that you're not missing any of those, you're not missing any spots.
Harvard Health found when spraying, most people apply just a quarter of what they need. Researchers recommend spraying each area for up to 6 seconds.
You know that you have enough when your skin glistens. If it's not glistening, you gotta put more.
But Dr. Danilo Del Campo says that doesn't mean sprays, when used properly, are any less effective than lotions.
Between a lotion that has SPF 30 and a spray that's SPF 30, they are equivalent. However, the difference is how do we apply it and the method that we apply it.
So we can verify, yes, spraying on sunscreens are as effective as lotions. However, they may be more difficult to use correctly than lotions. The doctors also say parents may want to use lotions for their children because it's harder to spray a good coating when kids are squirming around. With your Verify, I'm Brandon Lewis.
Welcome back. Private backyards are now the go-to space for recreation, entertainment, and solace since COVID. Here's how to make your backyard living space comfortable with Sunsetter. No matter how close you are with your neighbors, privacy is comfort. Whether you add wood, vinyl, or a natural fence from closely planted trees or bushes, this will boost your comfort level. Next, address the elements. Note the direction your backyard faces. For example, if your backyard faces southwest, you'll get plenty of sun during the day, shade trees, or a covered patio will cut down on the glare and heat from the sun. Finally, bite back at bugs. An essential oil diffuser is a natural way to ward against pesky bug bites. Sunsetter is America's #1 best-selling awning with affordable custom features without the custom price. Spend more time outside and get the best value with Sunsetter. It's been an industry leader for 30 years. Call 1-800-513-6851 or visit sunsetter.com for guaranteed pricing on American-made awnings built to last. We love sharing your comments. Kimberly says, great show and message today. Marquita says, I feel for Tori's mom. We all do.
Thank you, Marquita, longtime viewer. I just want to say this really quick. My mom went through surgeries she didn't need. I was told I wasn't going to make it. That's why my name's Victoria, because it's a victory. I want you to be, when you feel that you're being too pushy, go farther.
I tell you, with Eric, he was sick for 1.5 years with COVID, and every week we had a new doctor. And I was always on the calls, and it is thank God I had Dr. Coley there and you pushing me to be an advocate because it was very confusing.
Right, and you're steering a ship in which vocabulary you don't know.
Right.
It's language that makes you feel so vulnerable. Again, listen to me, be pushy, be pushy.
It's life-saving. We'll see you same time, same place. Bye, guys.